Officially live. If I can get some noise. Woo! There we go. We are officially live again. I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, but my ideal thing for the Agent Investor Group is really not necessarily me just, talking into a microphone by myself, hoping that people are paying attention and hoping that I'm teaching on the right topics. But I would much rather have more engagement, more interaction. So what we're going to be doing today, which is the second time that we've done this, is we're going to be taking questions live from the audience. So if you're paying attention online and you're online right now listening, if you do have a question, throw it in the chat box. We'll do the best to get to all the questions we can, but obviously we're going to give preferential treatment to those who took the time to drive to the wonderful city of Wakefield. So we've got an hour, and without further ado, we're going to get started. And we're going to get started, and I didn't tell you guys about this part, but just, put the camera on you, Kevin. What do you got, man?
So my question was, I wanted you to walk me through your first deal from start to finish, how it exactly went, pretty much every detail of it.
Okay. So that's pretty easy, and I've told the story a lot, but there's some things that I definitely want to highlight. So I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2003. Decided I wanted to do real estate. Did not do my first deal for 6 years. The reason I didn't do my first deal for 6 years is because I didn't have a mentor. Now, most of you have had real estate agent mentors or someone that mentored you in that business. Investing is the same thing. So what happened was I got a mentor. Some of you might know this, but I was a Homevestors franchisee. Have you guys ever seen the We Buy Ugly Houses Caveman? So that was the mentor that I got. And there was a specific person that was assigned to me as a mentor. And in 2009, I went on a seller appointment in Somerville, 13 Cameron Ave in Somerville. And when I went on that appointment, I was trying to list the house. This is a 2-family in Teal Square, walking Davis to Davis Square. And it was in 2009. And when I went on the appointment, I met with the woman. She was a hoarder. She did not want to list her house. I used every single selling strategy I possibly could. Her worst nightmare, literally, and she told me this, was that she didn't want people in her house seeing how she lived. She would have rather not sold than having her neighbors see what the inside of her house looked like. So she said to me, I want to sell direct, and that's it. And I don't even want the person who's going to buy the house to come inside the house. I'm only comfortable with you. So they have to buy it sight unseen. So she told me that she wanted $300,000 for her house, which at the time was worth $415,000. And she said, but I don't want to pay a commission, and I do not want people in my house. If you can make that happen, then I'll work with you. If not, then she really didn't have a plan B. It was just this is what I need, and I can't do anything else. So my mentor said, rather than you brokering the deal, put the deal under contract. He showed me how to do that. I put the deal under contract for me to buy. This is in 2009. I had $6,000 in my bank account, literally, I remember, and put the property under contract, and he showed me how to find a buyer for it. Now, it's not that hard in our market to find a buyer for a 2-family in Somerville that you can condo convert, right? I thought it was a big deal at the time because I never did it. What I found out is that it was really, really easy, and I had 50 people who wanted the deal. And most of the offers, I put it out at $350,000 because I thought I have it under contract for $300,000. I'll assign it for $50,000. This will be the biggest win of my life. And I reached out to about 20, I reached out to agents and investors, and I got about 25 offers. And they were all at the 350, 360, 370 range. And then there were a couple right at the top. One for 450, one for 415. The 450, which I wish I took in hindsight, had a mortgage contingency, but it wasn't a traditional mortgage. It was just they needed to pull a line of credit. And the mentor I had at the time said, take the cash, the 415 cash, took the 415 cash, made $115,000. Why that story is actually really important, first of all, is on Cameron Ave. That's what Cameron Real Estate Group is named after. But the things that are important about it is kind of where it relates to the agency part, which is number one, agents come across deals all the time by accident. And a lot of times as agents, we try to force people to list that don't want to list. Now, we think in our heads a lot of times that the solution that I would want for my house is the solution this person should want. We do this a lot of times in sales with everything. It's like, if you guys see how I'm dressed, I'm like pretty casual. I'm not, this is actually for me like dressed up. And I don't believe in myself in spending like thousands of dollars on like high-end clothes. But there's somebody that's in this audience that does. And there's somebody in this audience that buys all different types of things that I don't buy. And it's the same type of thing with someone selling their house. Because you think that somebody should get their house ready for sale, should clean it out, should go through a traditional sales process, doesn't actually mean that that's the right thing for that person. And in this case, it wasn't the right thing for that person. And she was like over the moon happy to get exactly what she wanted. And she got the number 300,000 because she wanted to go into some sort of like, it wasn't assisted living, but it was some sort of like extra care type of living. And that's like what she had, like, believe it or not, that was like her like goal for the last 10 years. And she hadn't taken action on it. And there was some program where she needed exactly 300,000 to like lock it in for the rest of her life. And that was like her thing. She didn't want $1 more. She couldn't do $1 less. And she wanting a simple sale. So again, getting back to like the major points, like agents come across deals like this all the time. And then the second thing is just like keeping your eyes open and taking advantage of like opportunities like that kind of come up. So that was my first deal, and it's not any more complicated than that. And that's why, like, when people say to me, you need money, I need money to do a deal. That's basically like saying to me that like my life is a lie, because most deals that I've ever done required no money out of my own pocket. All right, question two.
Question two. What are your top 3 requirements you look for when qualifying a property for apartment building development?
Yes, top 3 things we're looking for with apartment building development. Okay, so I don't know if I have 3, but let me think about this. All right, so the first thing is the minimum number of units. So this is like going back to like some of the biggest mistakes I've made. And it even goes back to like investing versus being an agent. You know, I said to you guys before we went live, being an agent is a 6-figure business, being an investor is a 7-figure business. I will tell you right now, neither one is harder than the other. So you're making a choice, like, do I want to earn 6? Being an agent and earning 6 figures is damn hard. Being an investor and earning 7 figures is damn hard. Neither one is harder. Actually, if I had to pick, to be honest with you, I think being an investor is easier for a few different reasons. But for your question, what we found, we did a lot of like smaller development projects, like ground up new construction in East Boston, 3 units, ground up new construction in East Boston, 2 units. What we found is that the number of units didn't matter. So again, it's like a mindset thing where you're like, oh, you know, doing a 50-unit project is much harder. It's actually not harder. It's the same exact thing. So we have a minimum number of units, which is 20 units. The second thing that we look for is really we want to be in kind of like somewhat better communities. So we went through a process where when we built up our 300-unit rental property portfolio made up of 3 families, 4 families, 6 families, 2 families, what are the types of areas around here that cash flow? Name a city.
Brooklyn.
What?
Brooklyn?
Is Brookline cash flow?
No. Worcester.
Not even close.
Holyoke.
Manchester, New Hampshire.
Manchester, Holyoke, Worcester, where else? Haverhill. That's where I owned, right? Those are the places that cash flow in today's market. And those are the places that tend to cash flow. Now, those are also the areas where you get the hardest challenges with tenants, right? So what we found was that those properties, you know, again, going back to when I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book basically says, buy a bunch of units, hire a good property manager, close your eyes, it's all passive. Has anybody come to the realization that that's not true? That's my number one, like, negative thing that I would say about that book is that is not true at all if you buy in areas where you have challenging tenants. We had 300 units in all areas with challenging tenants. I mean, every day there was a police incident. There was something going on that made it completely impossible to be passive. So the second thing is we want to be in, communities where we can attract, higher quality tenants. Trying to think of a third thing. I mean, those are the two big ones. And I think if I were to come up with a third one, it probably would be not real. So I don't want to come up with a third one. I don't want to make up a third one. I think those are the two big ones. 20 to 150 units, nicer communities. Actually, you know what? I do have a third one, which is related to a deal we passed on. Vanilla construction. So we got a deal that put in front of us on Revere Beach. And what would be difficult about like building a building there? Okay, zoning. What else? What was that? What would make the build hard? What do you have to do if you're like on a beach?
Aesthetically appealing.
Architecturally
appealing.
So sometimes you have to put it on stilts, but you probably have to do luxury, right? You probably have to have like pools and elevators and all this stuff, right? So we looked at that project. We're from Revere, all three of us, me and my two partners. We were like excited because it was in the city that we grew up in. But then when we looked at the build, it was all difficult, like add-on special things. So some of you have been to our project that we did, that we had in the last 2-day event in Wakefield. And if you look at it, it's a nice building, it's new construction, it's all vanilla. So we've learned that like doing special, unique things makes stuff a lot harder. It's why like when we flip, we don't do high-end properties. We do average properties that anyone can live in that doesn't require this like, oh, let me spend this extra time. Now, some people really, that's the part of the business that they enjoy. So I'm not knocking that. Some people want to do like luxury homes and make everything special, but we found that it's hard to kind of scale on that. All right, what do you got?
Yeah, I'd like to know, like, how did you deal with a thing that is an off-market deal, but it's way over asking?
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, so her question, and this is like just so common. You have a seller who wants to sell their property off market, but they also want to sell for more than what the property's worth. So what I'm about to say oftentimes does not actually solve the solution, does not solve your problem. But this is the reality, and this is the conversation that I would have with somebody. So if you want to get the most amount of money for your house, do you want more people to see it or less people to see it? You want the most amount of people. Like when you guys go on a listing appointment, you say to the seller, I have all these different marketing things that I can do. And they're going to get not only the regular buyers, but also all these other buyers, right? And we know that in any sale of any product, the more people that see something, the higher the price goes. So then you go on this cash offer appointment and the person tells you that I want the most amount of money for my house, but I want to show as few people as possible. So it's literally the exact opposite of like economics, right? So what I try to do and what I try to teach our salespeople to do, and it doesn't always work, is two things. Number one, uncover the motivation of why they want to sell off market. Really figure that out, because a lot of times there's not a lot of motivation to sell off market or as much as they might think. If you're going to sell off market, you have to pay the price, which is that you're going to get less money for your house. There is really no way to show fewer people and get more money. So I want to dig into like why they actually want to sell off market, right? Are they actually motivated to sell? Which is what a lot of times it comes down to, that they're like, if I could get X, I'll sell. That's not a real seller. So my comment to you, if that's the person, if their house is worth $600,000, they'll only sell off market for $800,000. Is that a lead we should be spending time on? The answer is definitely no, right? So that person to you might seem like somebody that should be in your pipeline, but they may not even be a real seller. So then the second part to that is just trying his best to give them an analogy, right? of, like if you're going to sell anything, is like if I walked around this room and I'm trying to sell a car, right? It's walking around this office right now and trying to sell it to the 20 people in this room. Is that how I'm going to get the most amount of money?
No.
It's not, right? Because again, the odds that someone in this room even wants a car is probably low. And if they are willing to buy it, Doug, you might say, I don't need a car, but I'll pay you 10 grand for your $20,000 car, right? So does that always work? No. And a lot of times it doesn't work because the person's not actually motivated to sell. So that's what I would try to figure out first. Like, are they actually motivated to sell? All right, what do you got?
Just how do you tap into foreclosures? What do you do to approach those special deals that are out there that is not common for just a common real estate agent or broker to actually tap into it? Are there any kind of like ways to just find those deals?
Yeah. So no matter what, so you said foreclosures, but foreclosures are not like the only thing, right?
Yeah.
There's like probates and tax liens and like
Right.
all this other stuff. Everything starts with determining like what niche you're trying to go after. But I would actually back up for a second and say, like, what are you actually trying to achieve? Because a lot of times when people like they ask a question like that, like it's like, well, why do you want foreclosures?
The common reason will be because you can find them cheaper.
Yeah. So then my question back to you would be like, is that the best strategy in today's market? It may or may not be, right? So like a lot of times, like you'll see a webinar, you'll see something online, and they're teaching a strategy, but that strategy might not be the best strategy for today, or it might not even be the best strategy for you. So in terms of like foreclosure specifically, every time somebody gets behind on their mortgage, it becomes public record. So you can actually buy a list of people that are behind on their mortgage. Now, by the way, does somebody being behind on their mortgage mean they want to sell? Not at all. So when we're talking about niches, you have to figure out what niche is the right niche for you, and then you have to become an expert in it. When it comes to foreclosures, you got to start with that list. And every single month, there's going to be new people that default or become behind on their mortgage. The number one objective for somebody to, once they get behind on their mortgage, is to not sell their house. In almost every case, it's very rare that someone gets 90 days behind and they're like, thank God you called me because I'm scared right now and I want to sell. Right? And most people, and this is understanding the niche, most people who get behind on their mortgage, and they get longer and longer and longer and longer. In Massachusetts, it can be a year, it can be 2 years. They're thinking, how do I stay in my house? Especially right now with like rents crazy high. They probably have a low interest rate. So they're first going to like do everything that they can to stay in their house. They're going to try to do a loan modification. They're going to they might do bankruptcy to stay in their home. There's a lot of strategies for people to stay in their houses. So if you're going to do that niche as an example, you have to be extremely patient and be willing to nurture a lead for like 2 years. And the people who do it well, that's what they do. They literally reach out to everybody. A lot of times they offer other services. Like they might offer loan modification services, right? And if the person gets a loan modification, well, that becomes a dead lead for them. But they know that a lot of people won't qualify for a loan mod. So it's like building the relationship while that person's behind in their mortgage. All right, what you got, Doug?
I have a couple questions, but just I'm going to tag off of what you just went over. So how do you identify that niche that you were referring to that's going to be the path of least resistance and the most profitable?
Yeah.
deal?
So everything comes back to like why investing, right? You know, I talk about this a lot, which is like, what's your 10-year goal? And until you know your 10-year goal, you're kind of screwed because all you're hearing is strategies. You don't know what strategy makes the most sense. So when we're talking about the 10-year goal, we've got to figure out like, how much monthly income do you need from investing? Then what's the vehicle you're going to use to get there? So if you're talking about passive income investing, that's different than if you're flipping. That's different than if you're doing vacation rentals. So we've got to figure out like, okay, what are you actually trying to achieve? Like when you signed up for the inner circle, what was the outcome you wanted? Flipping, right? So it's flipping. And did you already come up with how much money you want per year to make at flipping?
Ultimately, I'd like to make at least $250,000 a year from flipping.
Okay. So that means you need like 4, 5, 6 houses. All right. So this is good. You're actually ahead of where like most people are. Most people just have strategies in their head, right? So you want 4 or 5. And then what was your question to piggyback off of him? What strategy? Okay. So then the strategy becomes, how do I find off-market deals? So the strategy, in order to flip homes in this market right now, until the market changes, you've got to go off-market. Now, I want to be careful about this because, again, this is where like you get into some trouble if you walk into Barnes & Noble and you pick up a book. Because when I started, short sales, foreclosures, and auctions were absolutely the best 3 ways to find flips. All you had to do was literally show up at an auction, bid whatever the highest bid was going to be. Like you could buy 3 families in Lynn at auction for $150,000. So you needed no strategies back then, right? Or you could go online. I mean, Doug, when did you get into the business? I know you've been for a while.
Just real estate full-time probably 8 years ago.
8 years. Okay, so you actually got in once things have changed. Who was in the business in 09, 10, 11? All right, so was it easy or hard to find a foreclosure online that was a good deal?
I'm trying to remember.
9, 10, easy, right?
Yeah.
Like literally all you had to do was go online and buy a house off of MLS and you could flip it and you can make $50,000.
Because if you add to that, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, the bubble just burst right at that time.
Right.
Because 2008 was right about the time that the bubble burst.
Yep.
So a lot of people were out on the market selling for whatever they could get.
Whatever they could get. So I say that not to sidestep your question, but just to say that like this stuff changes at a moment's notice. It could change again. So right now it's simply getting properties off market. So then it becomes like, what type of properties, what type of areas do you want to flip in? So I would look and say, okay, what markets do you want to be in? And you might already know the answer to that. Then from there, we've got to say, okay, how are we going to find people that are motivated to sell their house at a discount? And there's only a few ways. So you may make a list of all people who have high enough equity in the towns that you want to do business in. And then you've got to approach them. Well, how can we approach them? We can mail them. We do a ton of mailings. You can door knock them. You can call them. You can text them. There's not too many other ways to like get in front of humans, right? We run TV. We run a pretty heavy Google pay-per-click. The problem with both of those methods is that it's not direct. So if you run a TV ad, you could get a lead from somebody selling a condo in a town that you don't even want to buy in. So for most people, like the big bulk, like billboards, TV, radio, pay-per-click, like I don't recommend, only because you're going to get leads that you don't even want. So then it comes back to making your list and figuring out what strategy you're going to do. Is it mailing? Is it calling? Is it texting? Or is it door knocking? And then like every other thing in marketing, it's a volume game. The more of those you can hit, the more conversations you can have, the more deals you're going to do. You said you found a few driving for dollars, right? Did you mail them or door knock them? And did you get deals from both door knocking and calling? Okay. And you just walked up and said, hey, I want to buy your property, right? Yeah. So like literally this. So Jason Goldfarb, who's one of our agents, he says this all the time and I get annoyed by it, but it's so true. Real estate is really, really simple, but it's not easy. What I mean by that is to door knock somebody, it's so simple. You knock on their door, you say, hi, this is Tom, want to buy your house. What we want is a solution that's not that. We want a solution that doesn't involve sales because sales is hard. So it's so simple, but to actually do it every day, it's not easy, right? But it's got to be one of those 4. It has to be cold calling, texting, door knocking, or mailing because there's no other way. I mean, if there's another way that we can get a human's attention, you know, I'm happy to discuss it, but that's really it, right? All right. What do you got, Alexa?
My question would be, what do you look for in a partner? Mainly for the bigger deals.
Okay. So partnering is pretty simple. from a high level. Partnering is all about somebody bringing value to the table, right? So anytime that you're partnering, I don't care if it's like going out with somebody, marrying somebody. I don't care if it's like partnering in a business or partnering in a deal. Like every party for it to work needs to bring value to the table. So the areas that we can bring value to the table in any deal, again, there's not a million of them, right? So let's talk about the different ways we can bring value. Number one, somebody could find the deal. So there's value in finding a deal. If you find a great deal, you're bringing a lot more value to the table than if you bring a junk deal. So let me just be clear about this when I say finding a deal. Finding a deal is not finding something on the MLS. It's also not like seeing like a post in a Facebook group for an overvalued property and then being like, hey, I'm bringing this deal. Like when I say bring a deal, I mean like you are bringing something that's an asset to the table on day one. The second thing that you can bring to a partnership is money. Now, the money doesn't always have to be yours. It can be yours. Money can be your biggest instrument into a deal. And again, I talked before we started, like if you're a high income earning person or business owner that's not in real estate, bringing money to a deal is probably going to be your asset because you're probably not going to be able to bring a deal to the table. And the third thing that you're not going to be able to bring is the project management. So the project management, depending on what type of deal it is, could be a big valuable thing to the deal. There's other things that you can bring. I mean, zoning knowledge or any specific type of knowledge, or even management of the property could be a big piece of it. I know you have some short-term rentals, right? I've never done a short-term rental. I don't want to have to manage. The reason I've never done a short-term rental, truthfully, is I don't want to have to build a system to manage a short-term rental. I know I could do it, but I don't want to do it. So again, that's like another value add that you specifically have in your business. But it's like, well, what do you have? And then what can the other person bring? And a lot of times as real estate professionals, we have time, expertise, deal finding capabilities. The biggest thing we typically don't have, not that we don't have any of it, but we're typically looking for money, right? All right, what do you got?
So after you did your first deal,
Yes.
what did you do next to build your business? Because I think
It's a great, I've never been asked that. That's such a good question, and no one ever asked that. That is such a good question. All right. So the question was, did my first deal, and it did springboard me. That changed the whole trajectory of everything I was doing, but nobody ever asked what did we do after that. So, and this is something that I don't talk about enough, but it can't be understated. We invested back into our business. So what we did was we took so I have three partners. Well, I have me and two other people, three total people. We took the $115,000. Now, what do most people do if they get $115,000? They split it up. Everybody takes $35,000. Somebody buys a car. Somebody takes a vacation, whatever. What we did, and again, we're not special, but this is the action that we took, is that we took $10,000 each, and we took the remainder, which was like $85,000, and we created a 6-month marketing budget and put it all into marketing. And that's what we did to create more deal flow. And that launched us because, and this is why, like, it's hard to get ahead when you're doing sales because your biggest commission checks are going to be like $10, $15, $20,000. It's hard to be like, okay, this is going to be a 6-month marketing budget. But we were able to turn it into a 6-month marketing budget, and we created more deals from it. And so, like, one thing that's important about reinvesting back into your business is, like, we talked about, like, you did a few door knocking, you did a few calling. When you're just starting, you have to put in more time. It's all like activation energy. As you get bigger and you have capital, you can use your capital to make things easier. So, like, I haven't door knocked a door in 10 years. I did door knock doors in the beginning, but once I got capital, I started to say, okay, how can I use my capital and not my time? Does that make sense? Did you have any follow-ups on that? Okay. All right. Diane, right? Okay. What do you got?
So when you have these properties, how do you actually find your your buyers, you know, if you have something that needs to be built or, you know, something that you want to flip that's not on the market without putting it into MLS?
Okay. So we just went through, and this is probably coming like to a little bit of an end, but we just went through like the golden era of like wholesaling. There have never been more cash buyers. Like, I don't know if there's ever been more cash buyers chasing fewer deals. So it comes down to like, how do you get in front of those people? And there's a lot. I could probably list off 10 strategies, but I'll try to make them as simple as possible. Are you in any like real estate investing Facebook groups?
No, not really.
Okay, so
Just yours I joined and, you know, to learn.
so that's not a good one for what I'm talking about though. So there are real estate is anybody in any real estate investing Facebook groups? And do you see deals posted in them? All the time, right? So if you have an off-market deal and you putting in to a real estate investing, what are the ones you're in? Can you just name them?
Investing in real estate, Massachusetts. It's like it names a city.
Yeah, I know. It's like Massachusetts investing in real estate, something like that.
Yeah.
Does anybody know any more, just so that we can give her some good information?
Greater Boston, I think. There's one that says Greater Boston that I come across.
Is it like Greater Boston Real Estate Investing?
Something like that. I come across it, but I don't belong to it.
Yeah, there's All Agent Connect. That one's a good one.
New England off market.
New England Off Market. Okay. So all of these groups are purposely like designed for people to post their off market deals in. And there's way more that I'm not thinking about. The easiest way to probably come in contact with somebody is literally to post in a group like that. And you will get like swarmed. Even if you just say in the group, hey, I come across off market opportunities once in a while. Give me your email. You'll get like 50 emails. It's very, like Corey, you've sold deals like that, right?
Yeah.
And is it hard?
No.
Yeah, it's not hard, and I'm just talking about one strategy. So there are other strategies though. So the other thing that I would do, it's like the 80-20 rule. Like 20% of the investors do 80% of the deals. So you want to kind of like network around to figure out who the 20% are. I mean, one simple solution that I can offer you right now is bring the deal to us. And I'm not saying that just because we would buy it, but we also could probably help place a deal. Then the other thing is, besides getting to know like who are the top players in the investing industry, is going to the top agents who work with investors. Right, Doug, you said you work with a lot of investors, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of agents who specifically work with investors. And obviously, if you bring it to an agent, they're cut into the deal. But sometimes that can be the quickest solution. So I've done that. Like I said earlier, I don't build high-end houses. But sometimes I'll get an off-market single-family ranch in Lexington. So what I'll do is I'll look and say, who is the agent who sold like the last 5 high-end new construction units in Lexington? They obviously have the buyer for that type of property. And over the course of time, you want to build if you're going to do that, you want to build your email list up. And you can build your email list up by asking people in Facebook groups, hey, give me your email. Or you can do it just from like networking around. And you don't need, because 20% of all investors do 80% of the deals, you don't need 1 million emails. The other place to go that's like an automatic, that's a great area, is going to live auctions. Because if you show up at a live auction, people are there with checks ready to give non-refundable money. All of those people, those are some of the most legitimate investors, because if you're coming to give non-refundable money on a deal, like, you're serious. Corey, what do you got?
Well, I was going to say for you was sometimes a lot of those agents, it's overpriced, and some of them they're just trying to advertise for someone else trying to get leads. That's been my experience with those guys. That's why I don't really follow those Facebook groups with guys.
Yeah.
That's one. And the other thing I want to ask you a question was, what type of investments for apartment buildings is your main focus? Is it A class, B class, C class? And how do you find the contractors who are not, shit bums, so to speak, stealing your money and trying to, vet them?
Yeah. So, well, I think by definition, what we're doing is A class. I mean, it's either A or B plus because we're doing all new construction. So automatically it's new. And then the towns we're doing them in, Wakefield, Nashua, New Hampshire, Peabody. I don't know. I don't know if it's A or A minus or B plus, but they're all new construction, so they're up there, right?
I've
And-
driven by it, that's what it looks like. It looks like you're increasing the neighborhood, so probably your B plus is becoming A minus eventually.
Yeah. So besides that, though, like the contractors. So this is the biggest thing I said to you guys that like it's a mistake. It's like a small-minded mistake that we made, and it's so easy to make these mistakes. The mistake is that like, okay, you're doing a bigger building, so it's harder to find the right construction people than it is if you're doing like a single family, because everybody could see themselves hiring a contractor for a single family. But it's the exact opposite in real life. Because in real life, you hire the person that's going to do a single family. Who are they? They're somebody that like, it's like two guys in a truck and like they're here one day, they're gone the next. Those are the absolute hardest people to manage and find management for. Somebody who can do a 100 unit, who wouldn't want to do a 200 unit apartment building if you're a contractor? That's like great work to do. And so these type of contractors, they're not even contractors, they're companies. So you're actually
Manage the manager who manages the sub.
correct. So we're hiring a construction company who's managing all of the people underneath. So it's actually much easier to do these projects. So we just finished that 19 unit in Wakefield. Minimal input from us. They're motivated to get it done. They got it done for the right price. And again, they have somebody who's on them all the time. They negotiate out terms with their subs ahead of time. Compare that to like a 3-family that we just did in East Boston, and it's like the exact opposite. Sorry, because we're chasing. All right, what do you got, Mr. Financial Advisor?
Okay. Walking into a multi-family deal, how you structure that deal in terms of the down money, which is 20-25%, how you get the loan get approved by the commercial lending. I'm having a hard time to get like commercial lending banks, especially if it's C-class property.
Well, are you saying that you have a down payment or you don't have a down payment?
I have the down payment, but sometimes if it's C-class, if it's not, if the market, if the current rate is actually below.
Yeah, so well, those are two. There's a few different things there. I mean, commercial banks are in business to do those loans. So if you have the down payment, the only thing, like you said, that could be stopping it is the rents. So one thing that you could do is renegotiate new leases before you buy it, so that you actually have like legitimate cash flowing property up front. The other thing is, I don't know how many lenders you've talked to. So all of these commercial banks, so it's different than like we work with clients, they're getting FHA loan. The FHA guidelines are the same for every single person, right? Every single loan officer, they're all the same. These commercial banks, they have their own loan committees and they make their own decisions. One could be totally different from another. So yeah.
In my experience, a lot of them can do it in-house, right? Some of the bigger institutions can do that. And they'll ask for like a letter of intent, and you, if you have previous experiences having 15, 20, 30 units, if you just have a 2-family, 3-family, and looking to get 15, 20 units, it will look differently. It depends on how long you can property manager. There's a lot of factors in that.
So I would say this, right? If that really shouldn't be a problem. If you can send me a message after this, I can send you some lenders that like to do these types of deals. It's possible that you're working with some lenders that do not want to do these types of deals. That might not be their bread and butter.
That's the only thing that might come up back in June, because we had that $5,000 loan from my agent, and then the bank, they were not sure about that dividing, even they give you the term sheet the first time. So I had the term sheet, but they were not sure. They said, Alex, there's a chance to move to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, let's put it like this, like lending on deals like that has been easy. So I'm wondering if it's just a lender that doesn't want to do those types of loans. All right, Jensen, what do you got?
Outside of your sphere,
Yep.
outside of family and friends, is the best strategy.
Yep. Cool. So best strategy for raising capital outside of your sphere. So first thing I'll start with, just so that everyone's on the same page, your sphere is definitely where you want to start. Hands down, because no matter who you're raising capital from, the first thing is that they have to know, like, and trust you. So if you're talking about like going outside of your sphere, you're automatically putting like time frame thing on it. Meaning like you're not going to meet somebody at a networking event and then they're going to give you money. So you're automatically adding time to the amount of time it takes to raise capital. So if you meet somebody and you build a relationship with them over like a 90-day period and they give you money in 90 days, that's like really fast. Because again, they just met you 90 days ago. So I would do, I mean, it's no different. You guys are agents. What would you rather have? Somebody in your sphere or someone that's like a random lead on Zillow? Like your sphere is always going to be better because you've already overcome the know, like, and trust barrier. So I would try to first maximize out your sphere before you go outside. And like most people haven't maximized their sphere when it comes to capital raising. So one thing that like all of you need to make a decision on is like, am I going to promote myself as an investor? And if you're an agent, if you're a successful agent, sometimes like that might be a scary decision because you're always out promoting yourself as an agent. I think you can do both. And in fact, I think it will help you even as an agent. But if you're an agent and you're posting on social media, how often are you talking about like investing deals that you're into? How often are you talking about like the ability to raise capital, like all those topics? Yeah.
Sorry, I just went to an event that's always I know this answer. You can't legally advertise money outside on Facebook. Big lawsuit. So you have to go with your sphere.
Well, so those are two different things. Like there's the SEC regulations, which we have to follow. You can't post saying like, hey, I have this deal. Who wants to invest? I've never met you before. That's illegal. But you can do other things. But I don't want to get into the SEC part because that will be like an hour long. You asked about non-sphere. So my first answer is like maximize your sphere first. But let's say you've done that. Then you've got to, like everything else, build outside of your sphere. So the most common way that people build outside of their sphere successfully is they pick a niche. What's my niche? What's my niche? You guys know my niche? Agent investor. Agent investor is my niche. I'm in front of 20 people right now. Some of you who I didn't know 6 months ago. So I have a niche. I educate on that niche. I have a podcast. I do training. So I'm getting in front of people that I've never met 6 months ago. So in order to raise capital, you have to get around more people. You have to get an audience. So what's that audience? My audience, what I know, is helping agents invest in real estate. So that's my niche. But like there's a lot of other niches. Like I'm in a group that just teaches people how to raise capital called Raise Masters. There's somebody in the group that was a pilot. All he does, everything is geared around helping pilots invest in real estate. That's his whole thing. It's a podcast. Every email he does, every like conference he goes to is for people that are pilots and how do they invest. I have another person in the group. He was in a technology company and he was a CTO of a technology company. So what does he do? He works with people that are in the technology space, invest in real estate. And again, he has a podcast, he has a book, he has email marketing. So it's like, how are you going to get attention? And then how are you going to niche down? Because you have to niche down. Like if you try to just say, hey, like I'm the raising capital guy or I'm the apartment guy, you're not going to stand out. So in terms of niching down, what you want to think about is like either what are you good at that you could teach on, or what are a group of people that I connect with? And I don't know the answer for you, but that's what I would think about. All right, what do you got?
My question was, how do you move into from being an agent to like a full-time investor, the mindset and I guess the value add that I would present for my next partner or mentor that I want?
So there's a lot of different ways. So the question is, how do you transition from agent to investor? So this is my philosophy. I'm not saying it's right, but I look at being an agent as a way to make active income. It's no different than if you were an employee. You're not an employee, right? You're self-employed, but it's no different than if you were an employee or you ran some other type of small business. That's your active income, right? So if we are successful as an agent or a successful employee or a successful small business owner, the first thing is we always have to make enough money to survive. So my first thing would be, like some people, you read a book and someone will say, oh, just, go cold and just go right into investing and it's like, well, how are you going to live for the next 2 to 3 months? It doesn't make any sense. So the first thing I would look at is to say, in order to be just an investor, you need to replace your agent income. And just like any other business that you're starting, that's not going to happen tomorrow. Like the only way you can replace your agent income tomorrow is if you get a job. And I'm sure none of you are here to go out and get a corporate job, right? So the first thing I would think about is like, okay, and then the other part is, do you want to not be an agent completely? Because there's ways to structure it so that you could be an agent, still make money as an agent. Because some of your, like if you look, like Alexa, if you think about this, right? What percentage of your deals are like really good, easy, that you would say, oh, there's no way I want to give that up? 80% are easy?
Yeah.
So that's a high percentage, right? So like, and how many hours a week do you think those took to manage? So 5 hours a week, 80% of your transactions are smooth. Now, some people are going to have different statistics on that, right? Some people might be like, oh, only 20% of mine are the easy ones, or 50%. But like as an agent, there are definitely like high profit deals, and there are definitely easy deals. And I think you know them when you see them, right? You know the price point, you know the type of person, you know if it's a referral. So I would first kind of like not question, but just think about whether or not you want to give up being an agent altogether, because the agent income, even if you can replace it as an investor, that can be like down payment money for houses. That can be like all these other things. But the transition to me is you've got to start by doing your first deal if you haven't done it. And is that deal going to be, a fix and flip, or is that going to be a buy and hold? And you have to get one, right? And the way that I did it was I got that $115,000 first deal. If that deal wasn't $115,000, I would have had to because I was an agent, I would have had to kept selling for longer and until I had that seed money. But I didn't quit being an agent right then and there. Like over the course of time, I kept saying, okay, what are the deals? What are my agent deals I don't want to do anymore? Okay, it's a condo that's $100,000 condo. That doesn't make sense for me to do. Let me work out a split with an agent on this one. Or this is a more difficult buyer that I don't even know if they're going to buy. Let me sub that out. And then, you're going from there. I mean, you can do it cold turkey, but for most people financially, that's going to be tough. But this also goes back into, for every person in this room, this is why, I promote the inner circle and obviously have those benefits. Every person in this room is a different age, has different money on the sideline, has a different financial situation, as in a different stage in their agent career, has different goals for being an investor. So it's like all this stuff is good, but where you get like the individual stuff is like more relevant. All right, Williams, what do you got?
My question is regarding the economy at this time. How do you deal with rising labor costs, maintenance?
Yep.
Gathering capital and property taxes and all that, and how does it impact on your fund?
So the question is, basically how does the current economy, and Williams mentioned a lot of things related to like inflation and rising costs, like how does it impact investing? So we've made a few changes in our investing business that I would recommend that everybody implement. The first is that we are not doing longer projects, longer big construction flips. So what I mean by that is like we're not doing projects, we're not doing single family fix and flips that take a year because there's two big negatives to it. The first is the labor and the construction material risk. So something that cost us $100,000 to renovate last year could legitimately cost us $140,000 this year. Now, if your profit was going to be $40,000, you're at zero, right? The second thing is because of where the market's at. No one here knows where the market's going. Anybody who tells you they know where the market's going is just wrong. They could incorrectly think they know, but they cannot predict it. There are too many variables. But if you think that we're at a point, which I believe, we're at the greatest risk of seeing a market decline than we've been in a long time, then we want to cut the duration of our flips. So we're only doing deals that take us 90 days. Because one thing we know about the real estate market is it's slow to react. It's not like a stock. You cannot, like, I don't care what happens, the entire US population could get laid off tomorrow, and not every house is going to go up for sale tomorrow. It's just not how it works. So if we cut our risk exposure to 90 days, then we can say, okay, even if like there's 10% year over year declines, we've only theoretically lost 2.5% during that quarter. Now, with that being said, this economy is good for other things. So if people are having a harder time affording to buy houses because there are 6.1% interest rates, what's the benefit there in real estate investing? So your very best renter is someone that could have bought 3 months ago, right? Totally qualified, they saved a down payment, but all of a sudden rates went from 3 to 6%. Now that person has to rent. So that's like with everything, with every business, with every economic thing, there's always two sides to the coin, which is why like you can't read a book because the book's going to be outdated 3 months later. And I guarantee what we all think is going to happen with the real estate market is going to be different 90 days from now because it's already been different. If you were to talk to me 90 days ago, I thought that we'd have a lot more inventory right now. Has anybody looked at year over year inventory lately?
There was a decline.
In our market, year over year, it's basically flat, which means that with all of this craziness in the economy, there has been no increase in inventory. Crazy, right? All right, so let's see, we got you. Marlene, what do you got? Okay, so the question is best strategies for off-market properties. The first question you'd have to ask you is, are you going to spend time or money? If you're going to spend time, you're going to spend money, then we're going to talk about the best ways to spend that money. Now, for most people, it's not money that they're looking to spend. If we're talking about money that you're looking to spend, then it's going to be things like mailers and pay-per-click and stuff like that. So for most people, they don't want to have a $10,000 a month marketing budget. So then we go, okay, how do you spend your time? So how you spend your time, to me, it's like picking a lead generation strategy as an agent. You have to think about what am I gonna do every day? Not what's the best, what will I actually do? So I could stand up here and be like, door knocking's the best. And you'd say, yeah, door knocking's the best. And then the second day you quit door knocking. Is door knocking the best in that case? No. It's not. If you're not gonna do it every day or 4 or 5 days a week, then it's the worst strategy for you. So in terms of the free strategies, I'll just kind of go through them. The ones that produce the best results. One area that most of you don't think about for off-market deals is other agents and networking with other agents. So I have a friend in San Diego. His entire business, and he flips about 100 houses a year, are for agent referrals. And all he does is connect with other agents. Like, you know how you EXP guys, you're always trying to recruit for EXP, right? So instead of doing that, what he does, same exact thing, right? Reaches out to other agents. Hey, do you have any off-market deals? Most real estate agents don't know what to do with an off-market deal. Literally. I had an agent that gave me a single-family fix and flip in Lynn. What she said to me verbatim was, I don't want this listing. It's too ugly. Would you buy it? I'm like, yeah, I'll buy it. And she said that to me, not even knowing if I would want it. Like her mindset was literally, this thing's a piece of garbage. Like, you probably wouldn't want this, right? And I'm like, actually, that's exactly what I want. So you have to understand that we have 35,000 or whatever agents in Massachusetts. We have another 10 in New Hampshire, whatever it is. We're surrounded by 50,000 agents, most of which do not understand how to identify these things or what to do with them. Now, if an agent brings you an off-market deal, do they make more money or less? They should make more. You should structure it so that they make you more, right? So if they just take that $200,000 property as a listing, they're going to make 3% of $200,000. They're going to make $6,000. If they bring it to you off market, they should be getting paid that plus money on the back end, not for a $200,000 house, but now you've renovated it, it's worth $350,000. So that's a niche. That would be a full-time job to prospect the agents. It is definitely not what everyone in this room should do. It's a niche. If you won't do it, like the EXP people, you guys are perfect for this. You guys, this is like tailor-made for you guys, right? That's one way. Second way is door knocking. Door knocking's hard. Door knocking is very effective. You would make a list of all the properties that have equity in the towns that you want to buy homes in, and you literally just knock on their door. And then after knocking on the door, a lot of times they're not going to be home, you leave a door hanger. And it just says, hey, we buy houses, this is my phone number. If you're not going to do it 3 or 4 days a week, don't do it, because you won't make any money doing it once in a while. It has to be like you're the door knocking person, or you're the agent referral person. Or you can do cold calling or texting. They're basically both the same thing except for a different method. So if you can lock yourself in a room all day and text or cold call people for 3 hours, perfect strategy for you. If you think it's a good idea, but you're not going to do it, horrible strategy for you. Yeah.
So when you're door knocking, it's kind of a gray area. Since we are licensed agents, we have to disclose that at that time.
I think you do, but I don't even think that's a negative. I mean, I'm an agent who also buys houses. Like, I don't think it has to be like this big thing, right? Because it's not a negative that you're an agent. I'm an agent, but my goal is to buy the property, not to list it.
What's the best tool to identify the equity in someone's property?
So what's the best tool to identify equity in someone's property? There are a million. The one that I use is called ListSource. And ListSource doesn't just tell you equity, it tells you a bunch of other things. So this is the other thing, like no matter what you're doing to get off market deals, you need a list of your targets. So say like, what town do you live in again in New Hampshire? You're in
Derry.
Derry, right? So what does Derry have? Like 5,000 to 10,000 homes? More than that? Okay, say it's 10,000 to make my life easier.
Yep.
So you're going to tell ListSource, Derry Homes, it's going to have 10,000 homes. Then you're going to say, show me everything with 50% or more equity. Now it goes down to 3,000 homes. Now you say, show me homes that were bought in the last 5 years. Now it shrinks. And then you might want to look at like how big the houses are, or like, I don't like buying newer houses because they're not going to sell to me. Anything that was built after 2000, I take out. Now that 10,000 list of Derry homes becomes 1,000. And then you're going to say, okay, out of those 1,000, how am I going to get in contact with them? Am I going to hit 50 houses a day door knocking? Or am I going to do 100 calls a day, calling or texting, whatever the strategy is? Again, all this stuff is so simple, but doing every day is not easy. It's like going to the gym, right? I could sit up here, tell you guys the exercises to do, and you go, yeah. And then, people sign up for the gym on January 1st, right? Has anyone ever gone to the gym on January 1st? So it's a madhouse. It's crazy. And seriously, how long do you have to wait before it's not busy anymore? Like literally Valentine's Day, right? So it's the same thing. All of these things are all the same. And why I always say like agents have it so easy is because this is all stuff that you guys already know. Like you already know, like if you're going to door knock, you kind of know what it would be like, or call or whatever. But instead of like making a $10,000 commission, you're going to make a $60,000 commission. What was that? List source. But there are, when I say like there are endless amount of softwares that will tell you. I actually think there's even one that connects to the MLS. Remind, does Remind tell you equity? Yeah, Remind tells you equity. Yeah, so there's an endless amount with equity. All right, Marlene, we got you. Justine, what do you have?
So when mapping out a location, what are the criteria?
Okay. So mapping out a location, what's the criteria? Buy and hold or flip? All right, so in general, it's going to be a very general but true statement. When it comes to flipping, people that live in higher end cities don't sell to investors. It is not 100% true, but it is mostly true. So if you go to Lexington, if you go to Winchester, if you go to Newton, like I've mailed Newton. I stopped, but I wasn't giving up. It was like 8 years. Not one deal. Not one deal. So you have to think first when you're flipping, like so selling off market is a demographic thing. Okay, who is the person that needs the off market deal? Right? Is it somebody that has a ton of financial resources? The answer is probably no, right? So if you keep asking somebody that has a lot of financial resources if they'll sell their house to you because you're going to pay their next 2 mortgage payments, it's probably not going to work out very well. So when it comes to flipping, I would think about like, what are the areas where there's distress, hopefully as close to me as possible. That doesn't matter quite as much, but like I think the closer that you can be to home, the better. And you live in Andover. You're right. You're surrounded by a lot of great areas, both for rental and for flipping. Yep.
So I just wonder, is it better to just mail, a letter out and with Spanish?
So we deal with that too, and that's a tough one. We haven't tried that, but in some of the towns specifically, it can be tough because of that. So I don't know if I have a great answer to that, but that definitely is a challenge in certain communities where English is not the first language. Yeah, Lowell doesn't have as much of that, but it actually still does have some of that too. But I'm not sure you can ever really get around that because we live in Greater Boston. There's a lot of different languages spoken, so it hasn't been an issue for us. And then when it comes to buy and hold, I look at it and say, hey, you've got to have a 10-year horizon. So if you have a 10-year horizon on something, what's an asset that you want to hold for 10 years? And then what are the cities that you want to hold in? And I would say, I would never do a 2-family ever. It's too few units. It's hard to cash flow. You lose one tenant, you've lost half your rent. So 3 units and up. And once you start going above 4 units, it's even better because it's commercial and you get better cost per unit. And you have fewer people that can do it. So ideally, like bigger is better typically. Hmm? Well, let me ask you this, Chris Martin. You have a 6-family, and you have a smaller unit, right?
4 unit.
Okay, but you've had smaller than that, right?
Yeah, 2 and 3.
All right, so I mean, what do you think, like for you, like the difference between managing a 2 versus a 6 is?
I mean, it's pretty much the same. You just have more tenants under the same roof, which actually makes it easier. So if you have a
the money and then start and I mean, first you gotta find the right deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the money part of it too, like, I went from like Lynn to April in the doing. So the price points actually weren't that much different from like a 3 in Lynn to like a 4 and 6 in those areas. So that was pretty much what I did. So I don't think the down payment, again, depending on where you're looking at, you can kind of transition nicely and have it be somewhat the same.
All right. Now, this
When you
question,
started out,
this better not be for Menace. I want your question, not his.
Yeah, it's right. So when you first started out, for someone that's starting out and has time to invest, how did you manage your time and where did you focus?
So this gets back into like, so she said, how did I manage my time? How did I focus when we first started? This goes back into like, the answer I'm going to give is going to be for me, but it literally is probably different for each person. Like my story is I had 2 other partners to start on day 1, and we segmentized our duties. You don't need partners to start, but what that allowed me to do is we said, okay, your focus is going to be this, your focus is going to be this, your focus is going to be this. So how we did it on day 1 is I was sales and marketing, getting deals, finding deals, getting them under contract. That was all I was responsible for. My second partner, just responsible for managing the construction. My third partner, accounting, finance, operations. So what it allowed me to do, and one of the reasons I'm good at off-market deals, is that was all I did. So that's all I did was I tried and tested, a lot of different ways to get off-market deals. And I also went on appointments in the beginning. So I did the marketing to get the appointments and the sales to get the deals. And that's all I did. But again, like if you don't have 2 other partners that are going to do that exact thing, then it becomes more challenging because on day 1, you're every person in that, and even within what we did, like marketing is different than sales. So I had 2 roles. And like my other partner did construction, which that really was only 1 role. But then my other partner did accounting, did legal, did like operations, so he was doing multiple roles too. And as we expanded, we hired different people into the roles where now, like I haven't been on a seller appointment in 6 or 7 years. And the marketing, like I'm lightly involved in that, but again, we're evolving and now I'm doing different things. So my role in the company has never been the same exactly year after year. Does that answer your question? Okay. Ernesto, you're last up.
Yeah, this is a quick question. Regarding, you have the first deal, and how do you establish a partnership with a construction company or just to make sure that it's going to be done in 90 days, to make sure, and also that the contractor has skin in the game to make sure that it will be done on time and on budget.
Okay, so a contracting question about, how do you kind of ensure things are going to be done on time and on budget? And there were a couple things that you said in there. One thing that you said is, partner and skin in the game. So to me, that means that they have a financial interest in the property somehow. And that's definitely one way that you can do it. It doesn't guarantee success just because you say, hey, you're the construction guy, we're going to do a deal, we're going to split it 50-50. That does not mean that they're going to deliver. It could incentivize them more. I'm not sure that you necessarily want to cut every construction person into your deal for a lot of different reasons. One thing that's it's tough about construction, and it's why I feel good about the fact that I've never had to do it, is that there is a lot of trial and error. So it's like anything else where, you're doing your best to find the right construction people, best subs, best project managers that you can. But you're taking a risk every single time that you hire somebody. And that's part of the game that is hard to kind of eliminate. And what we've done, again, it's like everything else. You hire somebody, they do a great job, an electrician, a plumber, floor person, and then you hire them again. You keep trying to hire them. You try to retain them. But we've been burnt a lot of times with construction. And so you try to avoid that if you can by getting a lot of recommendations. So if you can at all possible, like somebody reached out to me in the group for a contractor, and we happen to have somebody that we thought might be a good fit for them. So that's like one way that you can do it. Not everybody's willing to give up their contractors. We're typically not super happy to give up contractors because they're usually good and they're working for us, but that's one way that you can do it. But you're never going to have like 100% certainty on whether or not they're going to do a great job. So there's some risk there for sure. All right, so we've taken questions from every person in the room. We went over by 10 minutes, which is pretty good considering we had a pretty good showing for today. So for everybody who's live listening right now, we're considering doing more of these in the future, and I'll do as many as it makes sense to do. If people feel like it's worth, attending in person. If you do feel like this would be worthwhile for you to attend in person, do me a favor, type in office visit into the comment section below, and I'll reach out to you after this is over and talk about when a next office visit might be. But I know we started out with 25 people and we still have 18 on after a good hour and 15 minutes. So I appreciate everybody sticking on. And we're now going to go into a closed session with the people that are in the room, which is definitely another big benefit of coming in person, because we did the live session, but like I said, after this is shut down, we're all going to be able to share the real questions that everybody has, the deepest, darkest secrets and everything like that. So if you guys are interested in attending, type office visit into the chat box. And if not, I'm going to be announcing two things actually. We did come up with a location for the November 3rd and November 4th event. That's going to be at the Marriott Hotel in Danvers. If you haven't registered for the event yet, go to www.agentinvestorevent.com. We do have the location already signed. That's as of like 2 days ago. So we'll be making more announcements on that event as we get closer. But again, if you want to visit, type office chat into the chat box, and we'll see you guys again next week. Thank you for watching virtually.